What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking about B.L.A.D.E. I have Spider-Man footage on here because my other setup has been having some glitches. However, we're going to talk about this new concern that some people have brought up, and I'm going to basically show why I think people thinking that somehow Marvel has to include Sony in the decision-making of B.L.A.D.E. being an exclusive or not is a false equivalence, or I think it's a false premise overall. I've seen this concern. Some people have said, well, there just doesn't seem like there are enough people who will be able to play or support the Marvel B.L.A.D.E. game, so it seems like it's going to be a multi-plat for that particular reason. That premise is actually wrong. I'll show you what I think is evidence that actually refutes that, and I don't think you can base your argument on that. It could be that the game is a multi-plat, but there will be other reasons for the game to go to multi-plat than that one reason. I saw somebody on Twitter as well go ahead and say, well, the market leader PlayStation has been able to sell more copies of other games and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't seem likely that, Xbox is going to be able to take this game exclusive. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but the numbers are not in the favor of that argument. So let's go through a few pointers. Number one, the sentiment that Phil Spencer has towards IPs that are not owned by Xbox. We saw this for the very first time when those emails leaked in the Activision acquisition, where, according to this publication here by Game Informer, that Phil Spencer had considered purchasing Warner Brothers games. Now, one of the major reasons he cites as not wanting to pursue it is because they knew that they were not going to own the IPs outright if they went and purchased it, because the DC whole thing was going to convolute the process. Most big publishers do not like doing this. Ubisoft is an example I'll give you. Even though they're publishing right now the Avatar game and the Star Wars game, they still tout a bigger library than anyone else of IPs that they own. You can't find a company that owns as many IPs that they publish. Well, you couldn't at one point until Microsoft acquired Bethesda and Activision. But at one point, even Ubisoft was beating Bethesda, beating Activision in how many IPs they owned that were selling over 10 million copies, that they were raking in all the profits to themselves. Now that Microsoft has pretty much acquired Activision and Bethesda, they have that amount, and they're still not necessarily going to be too pleased in sharing a lot of stuff, especially in the eyes of shareholders. So I could see why Phil Spencer was a little adamant in this particular thing. If you want to read the article is here, and you can pretty much follow exactly, what is going on all over the place. And, you can kind of get a sense as to how this is all going. So with that in mind, I don't think it's likely that Phil Spencer would have said, oh, yeah, let's sign these terms that would have Marvel be able to dictate to us, we who are the investors in this game, because it's their studio that's making the game. It's their money that's paying, for the game to be made. And then they're going to go ahead and say, oh, let Marvel tell us what to do in that regard. I doubt it. Sure, they may have somebody from Marvel Games work with them in terms of continuity, story, and all of those things so that they don't go get into trouble with, overlapping on some IP, issues. But I don't necessarily think that overall where the game is going to end up is going to be a problem. If you want to take a look at another point that I think is very important, there was an interview that was actually done with, Stephen, I think it was Stephen Totilo, and he basically did this one, snapshot type interview where he actually looked into Disney's gaming and spoke a little bit with one of Disney's people who is in charge of the video game side of things. And he asked them a very simple question about the exclusivity of Indiana Jones. So basically, here's the snapshot of that. And it says, on renegotiating the Indiana Jones game's terms at the request of Microsoft to make it Xbox PC exclusive. After Microsoft bought its development studio, with Xbox still being one of the bigger marketplaces for games, we didn't feel like we were going to be overly exclusionary. We felt like it's still going to reach a broad set of folks. Who are these broad set of folks? I know, PlayStation fans, calm down. You're going to jump and say, oh, PlayStation sells more consoles. But there are more PC players than both PlayStation 5 consoles and Xbox Series consoles combined. That is the broad set of folks that is actually being cited here for the most part. You see, I could, be a little petty and make fun, but here's the thing. A lot of people don't really know the, gargantuan number that is the PC platform. It is decentralized. Yes, there are a lot of people who like different video games, but the reality is it is a huge market to actually launch into. indie developers have been able to find success launching just on the PC platform themselves, a very hard process. Whereas, in reality, you would think they would need PlayStation to be able to make a successful game. But that's not the case. Baldur's Gate 3 sold more on the PC platform than anywhere else because of its flexibility. They could do early access. They could raise funds. They could get feedback. Cyberpunk 2077, its PC launch because the hardware was just better than the PS4 at the time, and a lot of the other consoles sold well. The Division 2, which was a sequel to the Division 1, was carried by the PC platform. It sold 10 million copies, and the game was not on Steam. Those 10 million copies is sold on the Uplay platform when the console sales were still poor at the beginning of the launch. It wasn't until later that the console sales eventually kind of caught on. But that's to show how much the PC platform is a thing, even without the Xbox and PlayStation platform. So that's something that must be kept in mind in this regard. And we felt financially and strategically for the game that made sense at the time. Even now, PC is continuing to grow as a platform. A lot of people are seeing that the PlayStation and the Series X or whatever console may come, down the road is not going to be able to keep up with the top line hardware. Even what becomes trash hardware in the next 3 years, the next two consoles are not going to meet up to what a 4090 can do. Unless, of course, the technology takes a whole different turn. But I don't necessarily think that that's going to be very easy. And when I say the next PlayStation consoles, it may be a Pro, it may be a PlayStation 6 and a PS6 Pro. But again, the hardware power that a 4090 is carrying and a 4080 is carrying, that's not necessarily something that anybody wants to realistically put into a console because it really will complicate things and, cost and all that is not going to be feasible. So when you think about it, this is a very, very tough position to be able to overrule because there is, according to people who may think there are not enough Xbox players, by default, Microsoft went and basically said, this whole PC community, we basically call you all Xbox players, and PC community like, whatever. If you make good games, we'll play. And then them owning Bethesda just really does make things a little bit more interesting. So when you put these things together, I don't necessarily think that, Xbox would have taken a deal in that regard. It's not something that makes any sense. Something else, too, that, was very interesting was Stephen Totilo even continues to cite this interview of his and talks about how he actually reached out to Disney and asked them and said, is this game going to be an exclusive? Apparently, this was after the reveal of B.L.A.D.E. And what Disney straight up told him that that's a question for Bethesda. So apparently, Bethesda seems, from what I'm seeing here and what we're seeing, to have the final say as to whether this game is going to be an exclusive game or if it's going to be available on the PlayStation 5 console. I'm not saying it shouldn't be on the PlayStation 5 console. I hope nobody goes ahead and takes that as my conclusion. In fact, I would love for this game to be on the PlayStation console. I want it to be everywhere so people can play B.L.A.D.E. That's my position anyways. I've always taken that position, even though some people still continue to think that this so-called exclusivity that PlayStation is continuing to hold on to is going to be something that's sustainable. I laugh in the face of $200 million a pop because it's going to get really expensive soon. In fact, it's already expensive. That's why they're trying to do live service games. Because if it wasn't really that expensive, they wouldn't be trying anything else. And when I say expensive, I'm talking about profits. If the profits were really right there where they could actually get the job done, without using the live service model or making their own live service games, it won't be a deal, right? And when you think about everything right now, you can already tell because of the way things are going, Microsoft has already pretty much made very significant power moves. Taking Call of Duty to the Xbox platform, in my opinion, was not only a power move, was also a humiliating move to everything that PlayStation had already done successfully in the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 era. I mean, that was a really, really big move overall. And then when you actually come to, say, well, let's go back a little bit in time. Let's look at, let's do a little historical run, right? This is going to be very helpful for us. When nobody bought Guardians of the Galaxy, it was Xbox that came in and paid about $5 million to bring it to Game Pass. This was very significant because many people may not necessarily cite this, but to me, I don't think that Marvel and Xbox's relationship is one where, they would kind of want to hold Xbox's hand in this whole thing. So when you actually think about all of this, it just doesn't make any sense to think that they're going to go ahead and say, oh, you know what, Xbox, we would love for you to get this done in this way. And I think the final nail in the whole coffin of that argument is the fact that at some point before the Spider-Man game, Xbox was approached to do an exclusive game for Marvel. And at the time, Xbox declined that offer. If you guys remember, this is the story that everybody cites whenever you say, man, I would wish that, the Spider-Man games could maybe one day show up on, the Xbox platform, right? A lot of people will say, oh, yeah, Xbox gamers. Phil Spencer said no to Spider-Man. Actually, it wasn't no to Spider-Man. It was no to doing an Xbox game. They wanted to go ahead and focus on their platform. I think it paid off. They were able to build the infrastructure, position themselves, and now if they decide they want to do a Marvel exclusive or a DC exclusive, they have the game base to be able to take it on. Don't give me that, oh, there are not enough consoles. If Microsoft decided today that Xbox is going to make a DC exclusive game, they have enough consoles to sell it on. If they wanted to go with, say, Blade Part 1, Blade Part 2, Blade Part 3, and then go in and throw in another superhero like Daredevil, there's enough, of an audience to be able to deal with it. So Marvel is not, basically saying no to that proposal, it seems. It seems like everybody went back to the table, they talked it out, and that's why you never want to say never to anything, because at the end of the day, when all parties see that, oh, this is going to be beneficial for us, Marvel is happy to bury DC in the gaming space. I guarantee you. If a mom and pop shop developer right now showed up to Marvel's doors and say, hey, man, can you give us a superhero? They'll say, heck yeah, man, take it. Go make a game about it. Whereas DC is living in a closed ecosystem where only their own development studios can make their own games, thereby putting them at a very heavy disadvantage overall, because what you're going to get is a few studios that are making specific games and no one to be able to pivot when the market is changing. So they're basically stuck in a development loop and a development cycle. Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League is exactly one of those. They were making a live service game, and when it was time to pivot to go to the single player route, all they were left with was one game, which is the Wonder Woman game, right? That's what they're left with. And they're all going to be facing Wolverine, Captain America, Iron Man, Black Panther, and Black Panther again, and then now a Blade game. So DC is on the back foot because their strategy is something that they need to work on. But that's a whole different conversation for a whole different day. Thank you very much for watching the video. I really appreciate you guys' time and audience, and let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.